Baer Faxt is coming to you from Atlanta. I'm joined by Rand Suffolk, the director of the world famous High Museum. Unfortunately, I'm still in New York because I thought I might be playing in the Ryder Cup this morning, but the call didn't come. Rand, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
So last night, opening night of Atlanta Art Fair, how'd it go? What'd you see?
I thought it went really well. I came a little bit earlier, so there wasn't supposed to be giant crowds, but there were plenty of people here. And I thought there was really good energy. I think the caliber of the gallerists that are here this year seems to be better than last year even, and great diversity of work for people.
What stood out in your mind? Any particular piece? Did the High buy anything?
Not that I'm aware of, but we had other staff members rolling around. I just haven't spoken to them in the last 24 hours. I think what stood out to me wasn't anything in particular in terms of an individual artist's work or a specific work necessarily, but I really did appreciate, I think, the diversity of work that's here this year. Everything from Rashid Johnson to Donald Sultan to a lot of emerging artists are here. There's a slight emphasis on Southern artists, which I think is always important for us. But if you're a just starting out collector, if you're someone that's a seasoned collector, I think there's something for everyone to really see.
Well, the diversity word's kind of like has multiple meanings. Certainly, to my mind, it's a good term. It's certainly for you as a museum director, you're under pressure under those terms. And just to make it a sort of open-ended question, Atlanta is not your typical American city in that way either. If you could sort of take all those as one question.
I'm not exactly sure what the question is in there, but I will say this. I think that when my use of the word diversity wasn't loaded in any way, I think there's a multiplicity of artists here, multiplicity of voices that are here, different style, different media, different time period, and so forth. And I think that gives a very textured experience to people that are coming to this. As I said, wherever you are on that collecting sort of continuum, I think you're going to find something interesting or fun or enjoyable about being here at the art fair. And I think you're right. Atlanta is a pretty extraordinary city in many ways.
Yes, it's kind of like a city with a real lot of power in the African American community. Sort of stands out that way culturally too. So it would make sense that there would be a lot of work by African Americans and galleries that are African American too.
Sure, 100%. I think that's accurate. Atlanta, at the end of the day, is probably home base for the Black global elite. And so as a consequence of that, everything you said is accurate.
And the High Museum, how does that relate to that as a mission compared to other non-New York museums? Let's put it that way.
I think that our mission is to encourage the broadest possible public participation, sort of full stop, whatever that is. And we're dedicated to trying to do everything we can to really reflect the audience we serve. And so if you look at the demographics of the museum, really over the course of the past decade, we've worked our tails off to be what I hope has become a profoundly different magnet within our community that ultimately reflects that audience that we were just speaking about.
Well, we tend to be New York centric about the art world and the art market, and even the big art fairs. There are Basels that are now struggling to sort of say, wait a second, how do we get more available to more people? Might it be said that the more, I don't mean in a pejorative way, the provincial museums, you might be actually teaching us certain ways of how to expand our audience?
That is such a New York thing to say, provincial. Unbelievable. I would just say, let's say regional might be a better term for it. But I think I would go back to what you said at the very beginning. I think the High Museum of Art is a world-class institution. And I think where our scale allows us to perhaps be a little bit more nimble, a little bit more responsive, and a little bit more capable in terms of really trying to define what it is that will allow us to, in the best case scenario, dovetail our strengths with the community's needs and interests. And so at the High, we've worked very hard to, I think, make different decisions. I don't think there's a lot of pixie dust. I don't think there's a lot of, rocket science to this. Oftentimes, I think it's just about making different decisions, regardless of the scale of your organization. So For instance, you're always going to be hiring people. Take your time, build a staff that reflects the audience or the community that you're serving. You're always going to do exhibitions. Choose strategically different content when it comes to that. You're always going to be making acquisitions. Make different choices in terms of the artists that you're trying to bring into the collection and so forth. It's not necessarily about a new program or a statement on or a task force about and those sorts of things. I think it's just being super intentional about trying to dovetail, as I said, the things that give you strength where you have leverage as an organization, and you're using that to figure out how to connect more deeply with your community.
Well, I've often thought that, and I stand corrected, I was being a little bit silly when I said provincial, but I might say regional museums have a little bit, and you've worked at various ones like in Oklahoma, uh, for instance, where the community and the museums community lets the professionals be professionals more so than a MoMA board, which is like, yeah, you're the curator, but I know more than you kind of pressure.
There's probably some degree of accuracy there. I mean, I'm blessed with an incredible board here, just for the record, and I work with unbelievable individuals. But for sure, there are people on my board who have a certain perspective and believe very strongly that, I mean, I think board members always have a voice. They may not always have a vote when it comes to content and that sort of thing. And that's where you need to be able to kind of negotiate those sort of aspects of your role. And it's a big part of my job is to make sure that, we've got the people on our team that they're highly credentialed, they get paid to be the experts in their field, and that we're ultimately leaning into that expertise in a way that makes sense for the organization.
Well, you're even more important for your region in the sense of maybe being the Southeast or Georgia, in that you're the one place for that kid who's a little bit different. It's like, wow, I don't fit in quite the same way. I'm interested in theater or in art than the Whitney or something where New York is surrounded by many voices that reach out. You can, whether it's Indianapolis or the Walker, it seems to me the role for the community is much more significant than
yeah, I mean, I think there's some truth to that. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think there is a space where we're able to add value when it comes to that. I think the flip side, on the one hand, what you're saying is completely accurate in that for the museum, we don't have a ton of quote unquote competition, right? So, I mean, that's sort of a good thing for us within our ecosystem. The flip side of that is that if you go to another similarly sized metro, right? If you go to Philadelphia, they've got half dozen great art museums there. If you go to the Metroplex down in Dallas-Fort Worth, it's the same story there. And the truth of the matter is, even though they're each working independently, they're nonetheless within those cities sort of collectively raising awareness about the fact that, hey, this weekend you should go visit an art museum. Hey, you should start collecting stuff. Hey, you should, And so for us, in a city like Atlanta, which is, I believe, pushing probably the 7th largest metro in the city, there's a lot of really remarkably wonderful distraction here. And so ultimately, it's a lot of water for an institution like the High to carry to kind of build those bridges effectively.
Well, one thing I've noticed in Dallas, which I've been to a lot more than Philadelphia, is a sense of civic pride about art and culture, and that the left and the right come together around art much more in that environment. Would that be? I'm not sure that works in Philadelphia, but would you say that's true in Atlanta in a sense?
I mean, what I would tell you is that I do think there's a ton of civic pride in our cultural organizations, and I don't really. My experience has not been that politics really gets into the mix. So I think that's accurate for us.
And how big is the collecting world there in Atlanta that's able to support the commercial aspect of the fair?
I think we're sort of in a moment where we're playing a little bit of catch up. We're trying to develop that part of the ecology here. I think that's why the art fair is a great addition. I mean, we're sort of in a place where more is more, right? And that's better for us. I mean, you need to remember Atlanta as a city. I often tell people it's important to realize that we never really had an industrial golden age, right? We weren't like cities throughout the Northeast or the Midwest even, where there was this incredible revolution of industrialization, and major fortunes were being made, and there was a group of people that started to perceive themselves as the heir apparents to that grand cultural tradition of Europe. They were the new Medici, all went there, brought a bunch of stuff back that ultimately went into art museums. Atlanta never really had that moment. And so as a consequence of that, you see this sort of evolution where we're a little bit behind. I would also throw into the fact that
There's a tragic history behind that.
that's exactly what I was going to say, Josh, is that in the early 1960s, there was a group of about 100 plus Atlantans, really the cultural elite of our community, got on a plane, flew to Paris to see the sights and do the stuff, had a great time, and when they got back on the plane to fly home, at the Orly airfield, unfortunately the plane crashed and killed every single one of them. So as a community, we lost probably easily 2 generations of cultural leadership here that would be sort of, I think, would have set the table in a very different way for today's contemporary collectors to be approaching what they do. And so we're really in sort of a developmental phase here. I think there's momentum. I think a lot of that has to do with the community that we're in. Atlanta is, I like to tell people, I think it's a future city, meaning that while we have issues like every big city across the country, we really seem like we're heading in the right direction. The amount of sort of cultural capital that continues to come into this community is kind of remarkable. I think we're home to pushing 20 Fortune 500 companies have their headquarters here. We've got incredible colleges and universities are here. The music industry continues to be super vibrant and powerful. The film industry has
The
been
music
on fire.
industry, I think of LA, how the sports and music industry, particularly for African Americans collecting work by African Americans, that's got to be really potent force you're trying to lean into. Is that going on there? Are there like music moguls that are like really like, yeah, I get it. This fits with what I'm doing.
We have, I mean, for the high, we are trying to lean into that energy. I mean, on my board, I have several people who are either performers or managers or in the business otherwise. So that's been really great for us. I think also what you're seeing right now is that, that notion of, in the same way that you learn oftentimes philanthropy from one generation to another, what you're seeing right now amongst, I think, a number of groups in Atlanta is that people are starting to learn from others. And that's certainly evident when it comes to the music industry, for example, is that there are a few key individuals that have been collecting for a number of years, and there's a new generation or even contemporaries that are looking to them and saying, hey, I can do that. They've kind of opened the door to the possibility, and I think others are starting to kind of walk through that door.
Well, the museum becomes more critical in a sense that they can support the, a little bit more, say, a Rasheed Johnson show at a museum than at a gallery.
Perhaps, yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a struggle to bring in, a primary Bryce Martin show. That's not going to happen.
At the high or at a gallery?
At a gallery, so it falls upon the museum to do that. Whereas if you're in Paris or something, they're both sort of working together in it's different. I'm not saying it's better or worse, it's just inherently different because of the economics of things.
I think that's true. I mean, as we were saying, I think there's a part of our ecosystem which isn't quite developed when it comes to the gallery scene, right? And so that care and feeding or that opportunity that typically might be afforded a community isn't quite here yet, but I think it's emerging.
Well, then doesn't that have to come from the bottom up, from artists being able to live someplace, to affordable housing, to not-for-profit spaces, art schools? Where's Atlanta on all that? I mean, it seems to me it's got to be a bottom-up approach more than a top-down.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think Atlanta, we have a growing number of artists that are homegrown, and I think because of where we are and the sort of livability of this community, you're starting to see people decide to leave other cities and come here. And I think there's real energy around the possibility of what those artists are sort of bringing to the community, and the ability for us to develop some collectors. I mean, there's so many different pieces of this that are starting to try and come together in an effective way. I've been here about a decade, and I've never quite seen the stars aligning perhaps in the way that they are today, which is
And
super encouraging.
there's support from the mayor on down. I mean, some cities you can imagine there's not much support for the arts.
Well, there's certainly moral support. I don't know that financially any of the nonprofit organizations within this space are getting a ton of money from the city or the county or that sort of thing. And from that standpoint, I sort of regret to inform you, but we're completely average, right? As a community, we're not seeing a ton of government of any flavor money flowing to our organizations.
Now, how much does the High Museum leaning on collaborating with other museums? I mean, I've noticed for years museums buying works together, particularly large installations or video installations, where it's like, oh, the Tate and MoCA might own something. How much is that a future for institutions like yours?
I mean, that's a super question. I'm not entirely sure. I think going back to what I was just saying, I think the stars would kind of have to align with that to happen. We're totally open to it. We haven't done it that I'm aware of, certainly not during my tenure at the museum. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't do it. I don't, perhaps there just hasn't been the right thing that would really encourage us to think differently about that.
I would think that that's really a way to go. It's like, particularly if you're not showing Christian Marclay, The Clock, one of my favorite pieces. It's like, that would be a huge crowd pleaser there. Do you need to own it all the time? No, but if you were able to show it every 10 or 20 years, it'd be pretty great. And it's just like intuitively the kind of solution to sort of deal with less resources, but serve audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the current situation, I mean, in moving forward, we're all going to have to continually adapt and evolve. And thinking about our acquisitions in that way becomes differently strategic for sure.
Now, you're more of an encyclopedic museum too, so we're sort of looking at contemporary as the main focus, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's of, I think, considerable significance to us because, we have limited acquisition funds. And so to make those go even further, I think you bring up a good point.
How many objects does the museum have? I'm always sort of curious about that.
Just over 20,000. So we're not extraordinary. We're actually not an encyclopedic institution. We have 7 different collecting areas. So we're a general fine arts institution, but I wouldn't call us encyclopedic.
Do you know how many objects the Whitney has approximately?
I don't.
Would you say it's more or less than 100,000?
The Whitney?
Yeah.
I would say that it's probably, I'd say it's less.
Would you be surprised to hear it's almost the same amount as the High?
No, I wouldn't.
So it's like, we think of that, I think last I heard it was like 27,000 objects.
I think I would like to believe it's about quality, not quantity.
Well, you can probably have more quality if you're making more decisions that are saying no, no, no. That brings to mind, in a period when the art market was booming, not that long ago, there was a lot of buy one, give one. And were you being inundated with people trying to find a place to take a hot artist? Was that coming your way?
We were not inundated, but we were the beneficiary of that on multiple occasions.
So and has that stopped?
I'm trying to think in recent memory, in the last few, I don't think it's happened in the past year.
It was a big, big thing.
Yeah.
when the market was booming. I have reservations about it because it sort of takes a little bit of the power of the selection away from museum curators and puts it into the hands of the collectors. So I take this one, not that one, kind of thing.
I don't think that for us, I don't think we've been in a position where we were unwilling to say no. I mean, or needed to say no. That's probably a better way of putting it. The works that came our way or the opportunities were pretty extraordinary from that standpoint.
I mean, I often say as an advisor, which I am also, that the most important word that I have to my clients is no. In the same way, I think you have a responsibility to say no, thank you, which can be hard when someone's trying to give you something.
I mean, one of the things that made it easier for us is that we also were having conversations with the artists, and the artists themselves were thinking it would be really wonderful if the High Museum of Art had one of my works because of who we are, the community we serve, whether we've exhibited their work in the past, that sort of thing. There was a certain degree of logic, I think, about on all parts about, yeah, you know what, that work probably should be at the High. That would be a great thing for us. But you're not wrong. I mean, there is always a political aspect to this that can be complicating.
But the political aspect that would change everything for museums would be to allow a tax incentive for artists to give their own work to museums. And there's been a little bit of rumbling to try to get that.
They can do that now. They only get to, claim whatever the value of the
canvas,
the materials worth. They did it, right? So, but if you're to your point, 100%, if they were able to claim the market value of a work, that would be a game changer.
Is that something that's under discussion more and more by the Association of Museum Directors?
I think that has been a perennial push in dialogue with our lawmakers, and we've never been able to get it across the finish line.
There is a bit of a workaround sometimes where artists trade with each other and wait a period of time, and then they donate those works.
I'm not familiar with that. Yeah.
There are kinds of things. To take us out, what is the one thing that you would tell our audience who haven't been to Atlanta, or at least to Atlanta for the art scene, that they should understand to say, oh, next year I'm going to come down there to see the museum, see the Driscoll collection, to see the art fair? What's your what's your pitch to get us on that plane?
I mean, look, I think if you want to, Atlanta is an exceptional city, honestly. And if you haven't been here, it's just a city worth visiting regardless. You really should come and visit the city. Great food, great community. And then from the art standpoint, I mean, the High Museum of Art, we're an institution that if you haven't visited there, it's an experience unto itself. We've got incredible collections, architecture by 2 Pritzker Prize winners. We're, an institution. There's great vibrancy to who we are and the way in which we're connecting with our community. It would be well worth a weekend for you to come and visit Atlanta.
What's on the horizon for the future of Atlanta? Part of the reason for us to come. What's down the road?
Well, I think at the High Museum of Art, we've got in the next year some really incredible special exhibitions. We're just about to open. Will be the North American inaugural and probably exclusive venue for a Victor and Rolf exhibition, really a retrospective of their work, incredible fashion design, world-class. This spring, we're opening an Isamu Noguchi exhibition that's organized by the High Museum of Art. We're also very excited about the fact that we're ultimately going to be the 4th and final venue for American Sublime, the Amy Sherald exhibition that was unfortunately pulled from the Smithsonian. Our colleagues at Baltimore will take it first, and then it will come to Atlanta. So there's some really wonderful exhibitions on the horizon for sure.
Well, the only time I was there was for Super Bowl, so that was really not the most cultural moment.
No, you need to come back, Josh. We'll give you the rock star tour of the museum, take you to lunch. And
I did have great barbecue someplace, so I do remember that. So.
That's there, 100%.
Okay, so let's try to get me down there. Unfortunately, the opening museum was the same date of the art fair as our big charity event in New York, so I couldn't be there. But I thank you, man, for taking the time to, I hope you got me excited about Atlanta, and to get us to really particularly New Yorkers and Angelinos, to look a little bit outside of ourselves and say, wait a second, there's a lot going on in this country that we should be, now's the time to slow down and pay more attention.
Well, thank you very much. It was great talking with you.
Thank you.